In 1982, I began working as a correctional officer with the Georgia Department of Corrections. I did a 7-day shift rotation and was on the 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift this week. I punched my time card and headed home in December on a cold and brisk morning. I was looking forward to today morning because I'd scheduled a hunting excursion on my family's 98-acre farm overlooking the Chattahoochee River. I got home and gathered my belongings, hoping to make an early start. My wife had already departed for work, as most people who work regular hours do. I typically called her before going hunting, but I was in a hurry this morning and didn't. I hiked about 2 miles to my tree stand and arrived around 10:15 a.m. On the front side, my stand was about 20 feet tall and faced a dense clump of pines. The back side faced the river below and plummeted out to massive stones. I tied off my rifle to be dragged up after my ascent to the summit and began my ascent. I got to the top and prepared to pull my gun up. Then, unexpectedly, I heard a snap. I would return to the site several times afterwards to reflect on my life. I calculated the distance from the top of the stand to the boulder I landed on during a visit with a friend. 80 meters. I could see the water rising quickly as I began my descent to the river below. I knew this was it for me, and even though it was only seconds before contact, it felt like I was in slow motion. My mind was racing with so many ideas. Nobody knows where I am, including my wife, daughter, and relatives. Would I ever be discovered? Then, darkness. I'm not sure how long the darkness lasted. Then something amazing happened. I could feel myself departing my body. I was floating in the air a few feet above the river. With conflicting emotions, I examined my body. I was bleeding from my mouth, nose, and ears and noticed a trickle of blood on the boulder beneath me. I felt a pulling and began to rise quite quickly as I was contemplating on the status of my physique. I was hurtling through the atmosphere at breakneck speed. When I was leaving the atmosphere, I looked back and saw the earth. What a lovely sight. It was beautifully illuminated. I could see the planets as I peered forward. This couldn't be, I thought to myself. Nothing like this could or would happen to me when I died. The speed was getting quicker and faster. I glimpsed additional star systems and galaxies as I rushed forward. I walked into what appeared to be a hole of some kind. It was a long and dark night. However, I noticed light streaks of every color in the spectrum all around me. A dim light grew brighter and brighter in the distance ahead of me. I felt it all the way through my body when I entered the light. I was no longer terrified. Then, all of a sudden, I was standing before a big set of steps. They led to what appeared to be a bridge or a walkway of some sort. I noticed something wonderful and amazing in the distance. A city composed of what looked like glass or crystal. The lights had a variety of hues that radiated from them. I've never seen anything like it. In a haze of disbelief, I began heading towards the city. My mind was racing with questions. I had to figure out where I was. What was going on with me? I arrived at the city's entrance and noticed a double door around 30 feet in height and width. It gleamed like it had been polished. The door started to open as I stood there, puzzled. I stepped back and glanced inside. I could see people going around on the inside, just like they do in a mall here on Earth. These people, on the other hand, were dressed extremely differently. For one thing, they all appeared to be wearing robes with hoods. I walked through the doors, stunned by what I saw. The inside was enormous. It appeared to be square in design, with a balcony all around leading down to several levels. I walked up to the balcony and glanced down. It seemed to last an eternity. As I looked up, I noticed that numerous people were going by, yet no one seemed to see me. Then, as one approached, he abruptly came to a halt. I could see his face as he gently raised his head. Except for one thing. He appeared to be human. His gaze. There are no students. Nonetheless, they looked to switch to blue. His hair was completely white. I started to say anything, but he turned and pointed to a lengthy corridor. Despite the fact that we never spoke, I knew I had to go down this corridor. Then he went on as if nothing had happened. I knew I had to do the same. Something was nagging at me to go forward. I walked all the way down to the end of the corridor. I didn't take any turns to the right or left. I had a feeling my questions were about to be answered. I was once again confronted by a large double door. It appeared to be made of some kind of metal, but I couldn't determine if it was gold or not. The door suddenly opened. I heard a voice, not as we speak, but from within me that appeared to say, "Enter." I did as instructed, and the door slammed shut behind me. For the first time, I was terrified. Complete darkness, complete quiet. Then, after an unknown amount of time, a bright light began to glow in the chamber. It keeps becoming brighter and brighter. It was both above and in front of me. I attempted to look, but it nearly blinded me. I raised my hands in front of me and saw the outline of a figure seated on some kind of seat. Then it happened unexpectedly. How have you spent your life? My very being was penetrated by the voice. I had no response. Then, to my right, I noticed what appeared to be a movie, and I was in it. I witnessed my mother give birth to me, as well as my childhood and pals. Everything from my youth was there. Everything I'd ever done flashed before my eyes. As my life unfolded before my eyes, I attempted to recall the wonderful things I'd done. I grew up in a church and was extremely involved in church services, but as I contemplated this, I noticed a man in his car who had ran out of gas. I pulled over around a year ago and gave him a ride to a nearby business. I purchased him gas because he didn't have any money and assisted him in getting on his way. I asked myself, why am I seeing this? The voice was clear and loud. You had no intention of helping the soul and asked nothing in return. These are the essence of goodness. I saw all of the people I had injured and was shown how my actions had triggered the acts of others. I was taken aback. I never imagined that my behavior would influence those of my friends, family, and acquaintances. I witnessed the fruits of my labor. I was quite dissatisfied. I watched till the events were over. Indeed, I had accomplished so little in my life. In so many ways, I've been selfish and unkind. I was deeply sorry for having done so little. Then I heard the voice speak again, loud and clear. You must come back. But I didn't want to go back. Even after everything I'd seen and heard, I was glad to stay and wished to stay. I have a lot of questions, I said. Things I need to know I don't comprehend. You must return and alter your life to assist others change. A physician will want to operate on you. Do not allow this to happen. If you do, you will never be able to walk again. You'll be visited by someone who will bring you answers to your questions. You will return when I call. If you do these things, you'll be able to heal from everything that has happened. Look ahead and see what awaits you. When I turned around, I saw the earth in upheaval, terrible sights of war and death. Cities fell and new ones rose. I saw the United States in a volcano exploding, obscuring numerous cities. I watched as our country as we know it imploded. It is horrible to see people killing for food and water. I witnessed what appeared to be a massive explosion in the Earth's atmosphere, destroying much territory. When I looked around, I noticed a different type of person, younger and more calm. Although there were few cities left, the inhabitants seemed satisfied. It's time for you to depart, I heard again. But I was curious to see more. Then the doors opened, and I felt myself being dragged down the corridor. I passed through the city's doors and felt myself shooting through the hole I'd came through. I couldn't stop myself from speeding up. I entered Earth's atmosphere and saw the river below. I noticed that my body remained motionless. Then it was like an electric charge, so strong that I felt my entire body jump. When I opened my eyes, I saw the skyline and the trees above. Then, oh my God, the agony. I was choking on my own blood as I struggled for every breath. I eventually rolled onto my stomach. The agony was too much for me. When I looked up at the sky, I noticed that the sun was lower than I remembered. I took a look at my watch. It was 5:30 p.m. My sole idea was how to find aid. My gun was not far away, still hooked to the rope I tied around my waist. I began to draw it toward me. I was able to grip the barrel and bring it up to me. I fired every 10 minutes or so, thinking someone would come. It was getting late, and I realized I wouldn't be able to make it much longer. So I crawled on my stomach, pulling myself with the stock of my rifle. I crawled up a trail that led down to the river. I crawled and crawled some more. The pain was so intense that I passed out several times. I crawled through heavy undergrowth and bramble areas. I was ready to give up. I was exhausted and in excruciating agony. I knew I had to get somewhere, even if it was just to where I could be discovered. I peered ahead and saw the road I lived on through the woods. Sounds might be heard in the distance. Yes, thank you, God, I said to myself. I eventually got on the road and launched a faint call for aid, but I was too fatigued and collapsed in the road. My father-in-law was driving home from work when he saw me resting in the road. "It's all right," he said. "Help is on the way." That was the last thing I remembered seeing before entering the emergency room. The doctor was standing on my feet. "Can you feel it?" he said. "What do you feel?" I inquired. He was poking on my feet and legs. I was rendered immobile. "We cannot assist you here, son," he explained. "We are transporting you by ambulance to a hospital capable of treating your injuries." I was out like a light, whether from the agony or the drugs. When I awoke the next afternoon, 2 doctors were standing at the foot of my hospital bed. They introduced themselves as my attending physicians and proceeded to tell me that I needed surgery right now. Broken bones in my back were placing strain on my spinal nerve, causing paralysis. Then I heard the warning I had previously heard. Do not allow them to do surgery. Otherwise, you'll never be able to walk again. I absolutely understood, but I knew they wouldn't. I explained that I needed to visit my wife and daughter first. My wife and daughter came immediately after the doctor's visit. I informed her of what they had said. She recommended me to recognize that they were trying everything possible to assist me. I had no idea how to tell her what I'd gone through. I tried to explain to her that I did not believe I should be operated on. Despite her disagreement, she respected my requests. When the physicians arrived and I informed them of my decision, they were furious. I sat through lecture after lecture. "Okay, if you never want to walk again, that's up to you," one of them added. They then walked away. That night, I sobbed uncontrollably in my bed. Was I crazy? What was I up to? My chamber began to fill with light. "You'll be okay," I overheard someone say. Then it vanished. I collected myself and fell asleep. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks evolved into months. Then I felt a tingle on my feet one morning. I was filled with happiness. I informed the nurse that I wanted to get up and walk. She fixed her gaze on me and whispered, "We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens." Without a doubt, I knew I was healed. The nurse called my doctor, and he came by the next morning. "Do you think you'll be able to walk?" he said. "Yes," I said. "I guess we'll see." I was transported to the physical therapy room a few hours later. They carried me down the bed and lifted me to the vertical position. In front of a set of parallel bars, the nurse assisted me. I tightened my grasp on the bars and planted my feet firmly on the floor. Just one step. There are 2 steps. "My God, he's walking," the nurse who had taken me down said to the nurse who had brought me down. The next few days were difficult. I went to physical therapy several times and had numerous x-rays done per my doctor's orders. My wife and family were all taken aback, but I knew. I'd been warned. The rest had to be true too. My doctor was even more surprised when he discovered no bones pressing on my spinal nerve. To paraphrase him, this is not typical. What we were going to try to connect with surgery appears to have been done for you by a greater power. I've never seen anything like this. Finally, my life has transformed since that day, and I've been able to serve people in ways I never imagined possible. I wanted to share this with everyone, since it is what has kept me going in my search for the truth. Peace and light to everyone.